Is this 1408 to 1420? Okay. Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to say, but I want to say something. Right.
This is a director of community council meeting, and the recommendations here will go on to the city council. This one is particularly here, so we can hear comments from residents at Statutory.
So it's actually the council that's here, not the adjustment of planning board.
Well, this, there is a real planning board. Planning board is actually fully in your community council. Yeah, it's the kind of thing, and this is statutory meeting. So this is the time when residents and ratepayers should actually their comments, you know. Speakers list and agenda. Now, have you, did you have time to actually go over the report? They usually start on time, yes, and they will go through the items. What they'll do is, that's the first one, but some other works. Now, this particular one is slated to start at 9:05. It cannot be before that, but it will still start. Correct. So, as the resident, you are.
And then ultimately this will be
Good morning, everybody. We have quorum. I'd like to call this meeting of the North York Community Council to order. Welcome to members of the committee and, of course, members of the public. We acknowledge that the land we're meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississauga, the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples is now home to many diverse nations, Inuit, Métis people. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 of the Mississauga of the Credit. You can obviously follow the meeting on your computer, tablet, or smartphone at toronto.ca/council. And just a reminder that these sessions are videotaped. Of course, I'd like to wish everybody, staff and councilors and members of the public, a happy new year. I hope they had a restful and joyous holiday season. Merry Christmas, a happy Hanukkah, and I believe yesterday was the Russian Orthodox Christmas, if I've got that correct. So,
Today is Armenian Christmas.
Armenian Christmas today. Thank you. Yes, no, thank you for all these recognitions. We're certainly overwhelmed with joy here.
Just after the Epiphany, you can take your Christmas decorations.
My Christmas decoration is down. Yes, no, I will remember to do that. But thank you. Thank you very much for those friendly reminders. And of course, we wish everybody a safe and healthy new year and much success here at the City of Toronto, all its residents. And of course, we're here to do good things in the coming year. Are there any declarations of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? Hearing none. And can I have a motion to adopt the minutes of the previous meeting? Councillor Carroll, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. On behalf of North York Community Council, I'd like to offer my condolences to the Lastman family at the recent loss of Marilyn Lastman, Mel Lastman's wife. The Shiva is taking place this week, and I believe they get up from Shiva at 4 o'clock on Friday. I'd also, on behalf of North York Community Council, express our condolences to the Ford family in the loss of Diane Ford. And visitation, I believe, starts tomorrow, with the funeral on Saturday. At the same time, late last night, we got word that a Kiev-bound Ukraine International Airlines Boeing 737 plane crashed after takeoff from Tehran. It killed all 76 on board, and 63 Canadians were on board. So in light of these announcements, I would ask members of council to have a moment of silence for those lost, those close in our neighborhoods, and of course, those in foreign lands who were killed in the plane crash. Okay. So let's proceed with the run-through of items on the agenda that are non-time specific. Item number 4, preliminary report zoning bylaw amendment application 290 Sheppard Avenue West. Councillor Fillion.
Yes, I have a motion to adopt staff recommendations in the recommendations section of the report from the Director of Community Planning, and I've added a motion that direct that in order to process the application as a hotel, that planning staff verified that the proposal meets the definition of hotel in all respects.
Any questions for the mover to staff? Any speakers? No? Okay. Motion is on the screen. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. A hotel in the neighborhood. Very nice. Item 5, preliminary report, official plan amendment, zoning bylaw amendment, applications 6150, 6160 Yonge Street, and 911 Pleasant Avenue, and 18 Gould Avenue. Councillor Fillion?
I'll move the staff recommendations.
Staff recommendations are moved. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Item number 6, inclusion of the city property, City of Toronto's. Oh, I am sorry. The Heritage is timed.
I'm just wondering, if we have 2 deputies, my guess is to be agreeable to adopting a supplementary report.
It's a timed item.
That's time it.
Yeah, for 10 o'clock.
I'm just trying to, for purposes of efficiency, save everybody. If we're all on the same page, why?
No, we'll wait till 10. 12.8, parking amendments, Briar Hill Avenue. Councillor Cole?
I move staff recommendation.
Staff recommendations moved on 12.8, parking amendments, Briar Hill Avenue. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 12.9, pedestrian crossover, Elm Ridge Drive. Also Councillor Cole.
I'll move staff recommendation.
Staff recommendations moved on pedestrian crossover, Elm Ridge Road. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Item number 10.
I'll move staff recommendation.
Staff recommendations moved on item number 10, All-Way Stop Control, Orphis Road and Paul David Street. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. We have some additional items, and these are votes just to add them to the agenda. Item 12.17, report from Director of Transportation Services, permit and enforcement regarding encroachment appeal at 2360 Yonge Street. This is Councillor Cole, introduced by Councillor Cole.
Yeah, I'll just move introduction, right?
Just introduction at
Yeah.
this point. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Item number 12.18, memo submitted by myself. Okay, this is a technical amendment regarding a speed reduction requested by staff. All those in favor of adding it to the agenda? Those approved? Opposed? Carried. And item 12.19, memo submitted by Councillor Cole regarding report request renaming of the green space located southwest corner of Glen Grove and Marley as Edward Gilmore Parkette. Just on introduction, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried.
Deal with one of these items if you want, because we're too early to start there. If you want to do that.
Okay.
Contract 1217.
All right, Councillor Cole, we just have a couple of minutes before the first timed item, so why don't we do your introduced item, 1217? It has been distributed? It has not. Okay, we have to wait a few minutes on that. We can start deputants on 12.1, 1408, 1410, et cetera, Bayview Avenue in about 2 minutes. While I have a minute, I'd just like to introduce Marie Gregg, who is joining us here, helping us clerk and make the meetings efficient and accurate. Welcome. Welcome very much to North York Community Council, although you're very familiar with our operations here, as you've been sitting here for some time. So welcome, and we look forward to working with you. Okay, as it's 9:45, we can start with item 12.1, series of addresses on Bayview Avenue. Andy Gort, President, South Eglinton Ratepayers Residents Association. Thank you very much for coming. You have 5 minutes.
Okay. Thank you, Chair Pasternak and fellow North York Council members. My name is Andy Gort, and I'm the president of the South Eglinton Ratepayers and Residents Association. And I'm also representing here, worked closely with the adjacent Residents Association, the Leaside Residents Association, LRA, with Jeff Cattell. He's here today as well. And it relates to a recent mid-rise development on Bayview, south of Eglinton. It's quite an iconic shopping street. So this is a major change in the area. We wanted to reference that the developer, Gerlach Development, has been very open to work with the community and has been open to make changes. And also has adhered to not only OPA 405, but also the Midtown in Focus plan as it was accepted and approved by City Council in July of 2018. So it includes all the step backs and setbacks, the heights, etc. So we are very appreciative of a developer that is adhering to what the community and city planning and City Council really asked for. We also wanted to thank City Planning. Worked very closely with City Planning, both North York and initially downtown City Planning. It is still, so we are in support of the staff report with all the recommendations that are contained in that staff report. The community is still very nervous about these developments. Especially because Bayview has for a long time been the center of these communities on either side as a kind of an iconic shopping street. We are very nervous to see how this is going to develop and how it's going to become part of the new streetscape along Bayview. It will provide some additional options for the residents in the area to find an alternative type of living quarters other than low-rise residential, and I think that will be an attractive feature that people can remain in the neighborhood itself. It's also will make good use of the new Eglinton LRT, so there's lots of excellent transit options to not have to depend on a car all the time. There is a unique concern about this building, and that is that it's the first of its type that is a mid-block, mid-rise. And what that means is that we have two end gables that stick way out over the residential neighborhood. It gives the idea a bit of a cruise ship and a low-lying Caribbean island. So we are concerned about how that is going to portray when you're in a neighborhood, and that's one of the recommendations that we strongly support within the city staff report, that there's more work to be done as to the urban design element of that building and how it's going to display itself in the neighborhood. I know that there eventually might be an additional mid-rises on either side, but that can take a long time, or if ever. So in summary then, we are very happy with how the process has worked. We are a bit nervous about this development, and we want to thank the various parties for working closely with the community. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Any questions for the deputant? No? Okay, thank you very much. Jeff Cattell?
We worked together on the letter, and as such, we're...
Oh, so you're good?
With the presentation.
Okay, Bruce French?
No further comments, thank you.
No, we're good. Are there any other deputants on this item? 12.1? No? Okay, questions for staff? Speakers? Speakers? All right, move staff recommendations.
Yeah, I'll move them on behalf of Councillor Robinson, the staff
Okay.
recommendations.
Staff recommendations moved on behalf of Councillor Robinson. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Another 9:45 item is 12.2. Final report, zoning bylaw amendment, removal of H symbol 2075 Bayview Avenue. I don't have any deputants on this item. Anyone here to speak on 2075 Bayview Avenue? No? Any questions for staff? Any speakers? Would the vice chair like to move that on behalf of Councillor Robinson?
Sure, I'll move the staff recommendations on behalf of the councillor.
Okay, staff recommendations moved on behalf of Councillor Robinson. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Item 3, final report for 2490, 2514 Yonge Street, 1012 Castlefield, 20 Castlefield, and 568 Duplex Avenue. We have 3 deputants.
That one's for 10 bucks, so we're outside.
Oh my gosh, I've just been notified that it's not quite, we're not quite there. Why don't we go to finish up some of the untimed items?
17.
We can do 17 and 18.
17, 18, and 19 have been distributed, so you can do those if you want, not time.
No. Okay, we're going to go to back to non-timed items, which were introduced but not debated. Item 1217, that's an encroachment appeal, 2360 Yonge Street. Councillor Cole. It's item 17, encroachment appeal, 2360 Yonge Street.
Yes, this is something I support, and I think most of our departments are supportive of this, urban forestry, et cetera, with the soils, the soil cells, they call them. And this is the development on Yonge Street, so I move staff recommendation.
Okay, staff recommendations moved. Just to digress slightly, are there any questions for staff on this item? Any other speakers? No. Staff recommendations moved on item 17. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Item number 18, which I'll let the vice chair take care of this. This is a technical amendment because of some street name issues. Okay, so we have to have 2 votes. The first vote is to reopen something that was previously adopted by North York Community Council. So I need a 2/3. All those in favor? We're on item 18. This is a technical amendment on a previously adopted item regarding speed limit reductions on various streets in Ward 6. So the street names were incorrect in the first, in the first motion, so we have to fix that. So it's item 18, I need 2/3 vote to reopen. All those in favor? That looks like 2/3. And now the item is before us. I have nothing to say on the item. Any questions for staff? Any speakers? It's technical amendment. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And while we're at it, we'll go to Councillor Cole's item, item number 19.
Yes, if I can just say a couple of words.
Sure. Item 19, it's the renaming the green space located at the southwest corner of Glengrove Avenue, Marley Avenue as Edward Gilmore Parkett. Yeah, it's
Okay, no,
a,
I just wanted to, yeah, okay. I just want to say a few words about Ed Gilmore, who's just turned 100 years old. Okay, thank you.
that was it? Okay. This is asking for a report back on a renaming of some green space.
Yes.
Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. We're still a few minutes before 10. Our 10 o'clock item will be item 3. Counselor Cole's item, in about 5 minutes. Okay, we can start our 10 o'clock timed item. Maureen Capral.
I have a comment first, just before they speak.
Deputants.
Point of order.
Sure.
I'm going to be moving deferral of this item. So I think it has bearing on what the deputants will be doing, because they have a choice whether they want to speak now.
That's correct, yes.
Or if they speak now, they can't speak the second time. So therefore, I just want to,
No, thank you for pointing
Put
that
that
out,
on
Councillor
notice.
Cole. So what Councillor Cole is saying is those on the list to speak now on a statutory timed item would not be able to speak when the item comes back in March, I believe. So you can speak now. I have 3 on the list: Maureen Capral, Sasha Milanov, and Stacy Curtis. So if you're here, you're welcome to speak. But when the item comes back, it will not be dealt with today. It'll be moved off to March. When the items comes back, you will have already spoken. You won't be able to speak twice on the item.
Could I speak to the deferral?
You could
Okay. Is it better to?
you could speak once.
Should I wait? Okay.
So you can come back in March, or you can speak now. I assume that was Stacy.
Today. I don't know if I can come in March.
Okay, and your name is Maureen?
Curtis?
Oh, Stacy, okay.
I'll let you see my face, and then I apologize. I'm going to put my mask back on. I'm recovering from the flu and don't want to spread it.
Okay,
I have no idea when the meeting is in March, but I may not be able to be here. I'm very sorry, I haven't been able to attend previous meetings about this proposed development. I have many, many health issues, and they come and go, and that's my excuse. Anyways, I'm here because I live in the neighborhood. I've lived in the neighborhood. I live on Briar Hill between Duplex, right at Birdsall, between Duplex and Avenue Road. I have lived in this neighborhood, and I enjoy the situation of the scale of the neighborhood. What I am watching as a resident living north of Yonge and Eglinton is this massive train of development that's coming up Yonge Street, and it appears not to care about what the reaction is within the community. I understand that the architects probably had started out with a much higher quotient of units. They probably came in at 24 stories, and we've now landed at 14 stories. The scale of the neighborhood is 2 to 3 stories. There's the occasional units that are at 8 stories, which feels like our neighborhood can tolerate it. That's what's going in up Avenue Road, north of Lawrence. But at Yonge and Eglinton, we're being overpowered by high-rise units that make the neighborhood feel as though we are losing our sense of self. Specifically to this architectural development, when I look at the plans that were proposed and provided to me through the Lytton Park Ratepayers Association, I commend the architects for their kind of scaling back on the Yonge Street side. It's quite clever. The tiering is, I guess, more to the aesthetic that one would hope for. But at 14 stories, it will still loom over the neighborhood. It will still have a profile that will cast a huge shadow. I know that there's always shadow studies that people poo-poo, but the reality is it will exist. It's a hard wall on the neighbor's side. There's no aesthetic on the neighbor's side. So when you're on the duplex side, you're looking at a tower. There's a number of issues that I'd like to just address. Our bad weather comes in from the northwest. That type of development will not help to soften the blow when those winds and the storms hit that tower. I realize you have new towers just on the other side of the street at Erskine, and I know that those stories are much, much higher than what's suggested at the Capitol Theatre. But I would love for this committee to consider the idea that perhaps as we're moving north with these developments, that perhaps we should scale them back and keep them in tune with the units that are existing up on Lytton Street in Yonge, and there's another proposed one further north down in the gully on Yonge Street. The other thing that comes into my mind is the bird migration. I don't know how they contend with all these towers that are coming flying into my neighborhood, but that needs to be taken into consideration, because if the west wall is a harsh wall of reflective glass, then those birds, especially in the later part of the day, will come flying in, thinking that they're flying into the sunshine or they're flying into clouds, and slam into the side of the buildings. One should also consider that the amount of heat that will be hitting that west wall anytime after noon in the summer, and I gotta tell you, it's a hot sun, because I know from the orientation of my own house that the amount of air conditioning and cooling units required to keep those units under control will be profound. So you have a further impact on your hydro, the water consumption, and so forth and so on. But I think the thing is that, to me, it's about what are we doing with our developments. Are we, in fact, brave and going to say, well, we're going to have 14 stories, but those extra 6 stories above an eight-story level are going to go to people who need to be able to live in the neighborhood. We're talking about the fact that Toronto has not enough living spaces for young families, for...
You're approaching 5 minutes, if you could wrap up.
Anyways, would you consider, I'm not suggesting that I agree with this idea, but would you consider the idea that the developer, in order to have 14 stories, has to provide 6 stories of reduced cost housing to people who can buy a house, perhaps buy a condominium, but they can't afford it when it's $1.5 million or it's $1.8 million. And perhaps the pricing would have to be guaranteed to be $800,000 for those people. And they could be retirees, they could be young couples, they could be young families. But I think we have to consider what it is we are doing with our developments as we move up Yonge Street. Thank you very much for your time.
Great, thank you very much. Questions for the deputant? Councillor Cole?
Yeah, thank
There's
you.
a question for you.
Yes.
Thank you for coming.
Yes.
What street do you live on?
I live on Briar Hill at 244, so
Okay.
I'm on,
Yeah, thank you. I wonder, I see with Andy Gord was here, were you involved at all in the Midtown and Focus secondary plan that went on for 5 years, where the community tried to limit the development in the area?
I was not actively involved in it. I did go to several of the meetings that were held with the Lytton Park group, but I wasn't part of that group. But I agree with that concept.
But do you know that the province basically overruled that whole
Yes,
plan to
I'm-
try and limit? Secondly, are you aware of Bill 108 that was passed by the province, which basically asked for more intensification, higher buildings than what we have, and more densities than what we have in Yonge and Eglinton as a result of Bill 108?
I am aware of it, but I don't agree with it, and I think it's a disgrace.
But do you know that we're governed by those new rules that have been passed by your provincial government that basically limits our ability to control densities like at this site here, which I won't speak to specifically because I'm asking for a deferral? Are you aware that we're basically, as a city council or community council, limited in our ability to ask for lower densities, lower heights as a result of Bill 108, the return of the override of the Midtown and Focus plan?
Well, I guess I'm sort of aware of it. I haven't read the bills, but on the other hand, you're implying that we just give up the fight. And I'm sorry, I don't agree with the provincial government. It's not my provincial government, I have to say. So I don't agree with what's happened. I think the fact that our community has been ignored, and I'm sure that goes into many, many neighborhoods. The Bayview Avenue, my mother used to live at Bayview Avenue, so I'm watching the development. I understand that there is a desire to increase density, but the increased density should come with a value to it for the people who, the middle-class people, the lower-class people who want to live in neighborhoods like where Allenby School is, and they can no longer afford to be there.
Far from giving up the fight, we just had a massive meeting of 600 people at North Toronto Collegiate last month, where we again continue to fight and make people aware of the changes the provincial government has made, and that we're subject to those changes. So were you aware of that meeting there, where we had 600 people from?
I was aware of the meeting. I'm sorry, I was in the hospital.
But anyways, just
December.
as you know, the fight is continuing, but I hope that people like you make similar deputations to the people that set out the plans, and that's the provincial government that has already overridden most of the city's abilities to control development.
So I'm curious as to who would I make that?
Your local member of provincial parliament.
I don't know that
All
that's going
right,
to make a
well,
difference under the circumstances, but I will endeavor to do that because I won't give up the fight either.
Yeah, and if you talk to Andy Gord or to Rick, they'll tell you their fight as the fight continues.
Okay.
All right,
Thank you for
well, we'll
listening
keep
to
the
me. I
fight somewhere else. Thank you. Thank you very much, unless there's other questions for the deputant. Okay, thank you. That's your, Councillor Cole. So I'm assuming on this item that the other speakers,
Where's the Sasha one? We don't know where to confirm it there.
yeah, so any other speakers on this item, and just a reminder, if you speak today, when the item comes back in March, you will not be able to speak. So there's a,
Sasha Milanov, if I may speak.
yeah, so you'd like to speak today and not in March?
Yes,
Okay,
please.
fair enough. Thanks for coming. You have 5 minutes.
I hope the council will not forget what I have to say by March.
No, our memory's not bad. We're okay.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of council. My name is Sasha Milanov. I'm an architect and a professional planner. My wife and I live on St. Clements Avenue. In the last 50 years, 30 of which we are on the corner, southwest corner of Duplex and St. Clements. The address is 63 St. Clements Avenue. We strongly are objecting development as proposed. And I'll indicate the rationale for our objection. We read the report with interest and found that the report is reading as the developer has wrote it himself. The only good suggestion was to create a park, and there was some laughing suggestion that a 40-story building will be good in order to provide security for the park. I guess the people on the 14th story will need binoculars to do that. However, from the planning point of view, the proposal offends the policies of the official plan from A to Z. Since the official plan is amended, and I quote the sentence from the report, is the most important vehicle in implementing of the of the policies of the official plan and the provincial policy statement. The proposal development does not comply with the policies of the provincial policy statement. The proposed mixed-use building on the subject site is not appropriate and is not consistent with the provincial policy statement. The proposed height and massing are not consistent with the existing and planned build form of the area and will create a negative impact upon the surrounding lands. Stepping down of the building to the rear setback line of the property that abuts the residential neighborhood, and that's a new official plan 405, section 5326, if I can read it well, is not done. A 14-story wall is proposed on the west property line. Mixed rise performance standard states that maximum height should be limited to 33 meters, approximately 11 stories, which the proposed development is now 55.4 meters or 14 stories. 45-degree angular plane is designed off Yonge Street to accommodate Yonge Street, and I'm not quite sure why, but completely ignores the rear. So the rear is a 14-story wall facing the neighborhood. Proposed density of 6.21 times the area of the lot is way too high for this relatively small lot. The proposal does not reinforce the physical character of the neighborhood. The building is too high. Its massing, scale, and dwelling type of nearby residential properties is out of character. And I quote, "No changes will be made through the rezoning, minor variance, consistent with other public action that are not in keeping with the physical character of the neighborhood." End of quote. The proposal is not appropriate and will destabilize the existing well-established residential character of the residential neighborhood west of Duplex. West part of the property is designed as a neighborhood and zoned residential with overall density of 0.6 times the lot area and the maximum height of 9 meters. While the part of the 3-story on the Yonge Street has an overall density of 3 times the area of the lot and approximately height of 16 meters. The development is not to be compared with the proposed densities of 6.21 times the area of the lot. It's too high. Building is 15.4 meters high, and it's all quite inappropriate. As far as heritage buildings are concerned, the retention, quote unquote, of the facade of the Capitol Theater.
If you could, you're past 5 minutes, if you could wrap up?
Do I have a minute?
You have 5 minutes. You're over 5 minutes. Do you think you could wrap up?
If you allow me, just 1 minute and I'll finish.
Well, all right.
All I'm suggesting is that the heritage designation, that this is, the building is keeping this the facade of the Capitol Theater, which is quite inappropriate. It's done elsewhere, unfortunately, but it's also discouraged by the official plan policies, heritage. As far as the landscaping is concerned, the existing landscaping, which is not accessible to the public, is on the 10th floor. I'm assuming that the applicant is counting on the park at the rear of the property. I'm assuming also that the parking spaces that are proposed in the development are not for public use. So if this is not for public use and the park is designed, where the existing parking is going to go, on Duplex, on St. Clements, and on the residential streets. The development as proposed is not in public interest, and I kindly request council to refuse it.
Okay.
Thank you
Thank you
for
very
your
much. Any questions for the deputant? No? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So this is the last call for deputants on this item. There's a motion coming forward to defer it to March. Are there any others that would like to speak today? No? To the mover or to staff? Okay. Councillor Cole, you have a motion to defer. There are questions for the mover.
Should I move the motion first?
Yes, please. Put it on the table and let's
Move-
talk about it.
I move that North York Community Council adjourn its public meeting under the Planning Act until March 12th, 2020 at 10 a.m.
Councillor Carroll, you have questions for the mover?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if the counselor wants to speak to why he needs a deferral, because I'm just wondering what changes, a significant change has already been made here. The only thing that I don't find here that I would have loved to have seen, because it was a difficult thing from the beginning, was affordable housing, and I don't see more of that. So I was wondering what the goals are in the deferral?
The goals on the deferral, this is a three-pronged, you might say, item before us. There's a real estate report, which is confidential, that was deferred at General Government and Licensing last week to the next, I think, a March meeting of General Government. So that's why I wanted to try and get them in sync with that, so that General Government can deal with that deferral. And then we have the heritage designation, and then we have the final report. So essentially, it's to try and get it to come together in a reasonably cohesive item before us in March.
Okay, that was my question. I didn't realize that the piece that went to government had been deferred, so that makes sense to me. Thank you so much. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Any other questions for the mover? Speakers? Motion deferral is on the floor to the March 12, 2020 meeting at 10 a.m. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Well, one thing that's very difficult about working at a large municipality is with so many people, people come and go. And with mixed feelings, I'd like to say a few words about Joe Nanos, who will be retiring after 32 years with the City of Toronto. On January the 17th. And I just have a few comments. For the past 5 years, Joe has served as Director of Community Planning in North York Division during a period that has seen hundreds of development projects, including transformative projects such as the Winford Green Celestica redevelopment, the Centennial College Aerospace Campus, the Lawrence Heights and Allenby TCHC revitalization projects, alongside major transit expansions, including the opening of the University Spadina subway extension, the construction of the Eglinton Crosstown LRT, as well as significant area planning initiatives such as Don Mills Crossing, Keel Finch Plus, Laird Focus, and Consumer Next Secondary Plan. Prior to his term in North York, Joe spent a decade as a community planning manager in Scarborough, overseeing the contributing to diverse and challenging mix of development projects and planning studies. These included high-rise mixed-use developments in Scarborough Centre, public realm design, implementation efforts at Scarborough Civic Centre, complex transit network expansion studies, and earlier career highlights include rezoning Witchwood Barns for the facilities preservation, restoration as an affordable housing and arts building, and Main Street revitalization projects in Midtown Toronto, and focused review for Canada Square at Yonge and Eglinton. Joe has served as a mentor and coach to staff at the City of Toronto. Many of them are sitting over here, and aspiring to planners, and act as an inspiration to planners and development professionals at George Brown College, where he introduced students to the ins and outs of planning and zoning for several years as an instructor. Certainly on a personal level, with many of the applications coming into the new Ward 6, I can only thank Joe for his good counsel, his dedication, his attention to detail, his city building, and his transformative perspective of how land use should be, and creating a livable and safe city, which when we do international rankings, Toronto remains as one of the most, if perhaps not the most, livable city in the world. So Joe, I just wanted to thank you for your contribution to the City of Toronto. On behalf of my colleagues at Community Council, I want to wish you the very best in the years ahead. You still look very young, so I'm sure you got other plans, but I wanted to thank you for your great contribution to the City of Toronto and the work you've done here. It's to be commended. So thank you.
Thank you.
You do a group picture? You want to do a group picture? You want to do a group picture?
Yeah, sure.
Invite them up now. You want to do it now? There's been a strong request to do a group picture, Joe. So, if you're ready, why don't we do something right in front?
Who's taking it?
Oh, there's lots of cameras.
Should we get the staff up here?
Yeah. Do you want to bring the whole team up?
We do it up there?
Yeah, front.
And ask staff to come down with us too? His colleagues?
Okay. Let's reconvene the meeting on item 6, inclusion in the City of Toronto's Heritage Register, Don Mills Crossing properties. We have deputants on the item. Is Oliver Neng of the Presbyterian Church in Canada? Great. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for coming. You have 5 minutes.
Good morning, Chairman and members of the City Community Council.
Sure.
Is it on?
Mic on?
Okay.
Yeah, you're good.
Good morning, Chairman and members of the Community Council. My name is Oliver Ng, CFO of the Presbyterian Church in Canada and members of the Trustee Board. I'd like to speak against including 50 Winford Drive on the city's Heritage Register, and I have 6 reasons. First, the building is over 50 years old, and every year it costs us over $300,000 to maintain the building. And the ventilation system is not up to modern standard. Some parts of the buildings are very cold, and some parts are very warm. It will take us at least $250,000 to bring it up to date. And the roof is leaking all the time, and it requires constant patching. A month ago, our transformer blew up, and Toronto Hydro has to replace the transformer, as well as all the underground cables. We lost power for 1 week. In fact, we are making plans to move out of our building in 4 years and sell the current building. The possible detrimental financial implications for the church in terms of values and marketability of the building, if it is as a heritage property, is unfair cost to the church. And secondly, as a taxpayer, I think that city should spend the money and resources in other more urgent things like affordable housing and public transit, rather than on heritage properties. Third, my building is just an office building. It has absolutely no cultural heritage value. I don't understand how the building can be classified as having cultural heritage value. It is no different from the commercial building next door. Further, it has been modified significantly over the years, already through renovations. Fourth, our next door properties to the east and west are not a heritage register, and I don't understand why our building should be included as such. Fifth, the Don Mills crossing area needs to have a redevelopment of the whole area to bring the area up to 21st century. It makes no sense to retain 16 properties and allow redevelopment of other properties. It makes the area look very inconsistent. And my final point, I'm stating very clear that I don't want my building to be included in the Heritage Register, and I don't think the city has the legal right to force something that the property's owner doesn't want. I will take every possible legal actions to prevent my properties to be included in the Register Heritage. I hope the city can reconsider the proposal. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions for the deputant? No? Okay, thank you very much.
And I have put it into a memo, so I can...
That can be distributed by the clerk. Thank you. Michael Cara? Thank you very much for coming. You have 5 minutes.
Good morning. It's my intention to be very brief today. My name is Michael Cara on behalf of the Independent Order of Foresters, who own the property at 789 Dominos Road, which is one of the properties included on the deferral list, is what I'll characterize it as, on the supplementary report that was recently released. Out of a fear that the wrong recommendation might be adopted today, I just note that that supplementary report, which is fairly recent, isn't actually included in the agenda for today's, that's being distributed today. However, it was posted online. In short, we're generally supportive of the recommendations of the supplementary report. As suggested in the comments section of that report, we've been engaged in productive discussions with staff since the time of the previous deferral. However, more time is needed at this juncture. Accordingly, my only further submission at this time would be that if a deferral is in fact granted today, that it be longer than the last so that a more fulsome discussion with staff can be undertaken. There are a number of properties included on that deferral list, so perhaps I would suggest a date in spring might be the best time for that deferral. Subject to any questions that you have at this time, those are the extent of my deputations.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions for the deputant? Councillor Carroll?
Just quickly, did you say that the supplementary report was not available to the public that's in the gallery?
That's correct. In the agenda that I picked up today, it wasn't included or referenced. I'm not, again, the report was released fairly recently, so that might just be an error, but I was worried that the recommendations are substantially different, so I wanted to point that out.
So just to be clear, do we now have it there in paper copy for the public while we're on the item?
Yeah, there is.
So it is available to them now?
It's a public document, and it is
Yeah,
available.
okay, just making sure, because it may not have been when you arrived, but it's very definitely now, so if anybody wants it, it's there. Yeah.
Okay, and any other? If you'd like a copy of it, the clerk would have a copy.
I have a copy.
Oh, you do have a copy now?
I don't know if it's changed since I arrived, but it wasn't in this one. So just a word of caution.
Nothing's changed since Monday. It's been online, and if that's what you've got in your possession, it has not changed.
Okay.
All righty. Any other questions for the deputant? No? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Questions for staff? Speakers?
I'll move the supplementary recommendation, the recommendation for the supplementary report.
Oh, so we're going to have to go back. Councillor Carroll does have questions of staff.
Sorry, I thought there was another speaker. I do have questions of staff. Yeah. Okay. So I wanted to ask questions about the impact of the supplementary report. If we are listing some today but holding some, what are the risks in doing that?
I would say there are no risks at this time. We're monitoring all the time for activity, and we've had productive discussions, knowing what the activities are of those sites, and in particular, this new information. The institutional building is also not at risk. So I would say there's no risks.
So what the report says is that you've had conversations with all those owners. You want to have more conversations. Is the goal? It doesn't give a date of reporting back exactly, but are we setting a specific date at which we will hear back?
Councillor, through the chair, one of the issues for us was also it just coincided with the holy season, like the holidays. So,
Yeah.
so we had the initial discussion with various property owners. It was really, to be honest, a chance for us to explain what was in the statements. I don't think it's a protracted discussion. There are always some that have a differing opinion of, is this heritage value or not? I'm confident in the advice from our report, but there could be some tweaks specifically around the description of heritage attributes. I would say it probably is too rushed to be ready because of the report cycle and to come back at the next one. So that's why we left it open-ended.
So I'm particularly concerned, though, because we had a deputant today who is on those that would be adopted today. And if we adopt them today,
Yes.
he's talking about legal action. You maybe just heard that for the first time. Does that put us in any risk? Because the goal originally was to really do all the late modern and modern examples in the area. By cherry picking some and pulling them back out, and then someone who's still in making the statement he made today, do we have a problem?
No, I don't think we do. I think that, part of listing and designation is confusing to the public and to property owners, and it gives us an opportunity, everyone's just coming back themselves to their offices and gearing up. I think it's, warranted. I don't believe that this is a protracted discussion in any manner. But it's, it's there as one of the deputies said, there are 5 or 6 property owners that we need to get to. And so just even scheduling again a follow-up with them, you know, I don't want to rush it within a week.
Okay.
Just to clarify as well, which is something else that we also discuss, is that listing has no legal protection.
Right.
So it's really just a trigger or a flag for us that the application of official plan policies and also notification of a demolition. We have 60 days pre-notification for that for listing. But there actually is no mechanism for a legal objection to, or even objection in the designation. That is something in the future that Bill
Right,
108
and that-
imagines, but we will be sufficiently due diligent to continue this productive discussion. We're not going to let it lag.
Okay, I really needed to hear that.
Yes.
That's precisely why I didn't see the reason for pulling some out, because we are just listing. And something like, if there needs to be further discussion on something like the IOF building, I can't imagine they would proceed to demolition on that building
That's right.
in a heartbeat.
Right.
But I worry about little treasures like the Grandin Toy Building,
Yeah.
things like that. But you intend to report back in a fairly timely way?
Most definitely, yes. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carroll. Any other questions for staff? Councillor, Deputy Mayor Minnan-Wong?
How many buildings are we putting on the register through these reports?
The manner to which we're right now, the revised,
You're putting a number aside and deferring a number of them, but there are.
but in total, it would be 16 out of 370 properties that we surveyed in the study
No,
area.
but you recommended a number, and you're putting aside, deferring a number in the supplementary report, but still, you are, the ones that you aren't recommending for deferral, how many are they on that list? How many
So
properties?
10 will go immediately forward to council if you so desire to adopt the recommendations.
So we're still moving the ball down the field in terms of.
Most definitely, sir.
Identifying those properties where the property owners actually didn't have any concerns. So we're just actually we're actually deferring to work with the property owners, to listen to the property owners. And those property owners aren't imminently taking any action, in your view, to demolish their buildings. Is that fair to say?
That is fair to say, council.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Any other questions for staff? I just have one very briefly. Legal recourse or procedural recourse for an individual property owner. I know you made passing references to it earlier. Is there legal or procedural or regulatory recourse for someone who is on this list to take action against the city?
No, there is not.
So the courts are there for anyone to take legal action for almost anything. In fact, I was once advised of the school board that by our chief legal person that you could be sued for the color of your tie. Are you saying that's not an option for these property owners?
Not for listing under the Ontario Heritage Act. It has no legal standing on the property itself, unlike designation, which is registered on titled property. So there is no objection.
Okay.
Can I ask a question on that? Is the decision, sorry, I didn't.
Yeah, okay.
Is the
I'm
decision,
done.
does it designate appealable to to the LPAT or any other administrative tribunal?
Through the chair, that is correct. However, this matter before us is only for listing, not the
I understand.
designation. But most definitely.
Listing's not appealable, but designation.
Yes, it is.
itself
Designation,
is
if
appealable
in
to
the.
LPAT.
Pardon me, I don't mean to speak over you. Yes, in the future, if at any time there was a report that would be come forward for consideration of designation to council on any of these properties, that if so that council wishes to adopt that designation, there's a 30-day notice for an appeal, and it goes to the LPAT.
Right, okay, thank you.
Thank you for that clarity. Any other questions for staff? No? Speakers? Councillor Carroll?
Yeah, I was very grateful for the answers, because I think it really explained things, partly for us, but also for the community that's here. And it's why I have the concern with holding out the properties that are being held out in the supplementary report. They are treasures. They are just as valuable as the others. And we are just listing here. What we're talking about is listing these. And what this report includes, the original report includes, is what happens when you don't. You know, if an area becomes an area of interest, and any transit line makes an area of interest, you have to take a look at your heritage. We didn't do that when we first started our conversations long, long ago about Transit City, and the Batashu building is gone. Whether it was because the area became an interest because of who lives there, or because it was obviously becoming a treasure, or an area of interest because of the transit. Either way, we lost that building because we didn't do this. And this is just a little thing. It doesn't stop the owners of the building from making considerations. It simply kicks in certain considerations on our side, having that list, which is why I really don't understand why IOF needs to stop that from happening. Because they've been good partners up until now. Surely they'd want to have that conversation. It is a wonderful example of the idea of two towers with a little structure in between. I mean, that's become a Toronto trademark, the podium with the towers. And one of these has already been converted. Changes have happened to some of these buildings already. And now here we are, facing what happens to the Don Mills Crossing Business Park, which is in its entirety a modernist jewel. Once the Crosstown community and its wonderful community center go in, once the Crosstown line opens, there is interest in this neighborhood that we need to have certain levers to make sure that it's considered in a certain way. I really don't understand the pulling out of the others. I'm hoping that we can see a report back in the very, very near future. But to be on the safe side, I'm going to be voting against the supplementary recommendation because I want to make it clear I'm really not comfortable pulling out the buildings that we're pulling out while the others proceed, when in fact we're just trying to prepare so that we would have a different conversation somewhere down the line if they were doing anything with their buildings. Just a different conversation. That's all this report makes possible. So those are my comments. I really hope we see the report back very, very soon.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Carroll. Any other speakers? Deputy Mayor Minnan-Wong?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to move the supplementary report. I will just say that we are putting on the registered 10 properties, so there is movement today. I think this is a fair and balanced approach to working with those property owners who've invested significant sums of money in their properties, to work with them and not just, bulldoze our way through to putting them on a list that they're quite fearful of being put on. Part of that process is, whether real or imagined, to work with them to move forward in a constructive way and to listen to their concerns and not, just have some sort of, process where they're just listened to and then you just move along and just, put a stamp on it, which that seemed to be what was happening. So I'm not in favor of it. I'm not in favor of that. So I think this is the proper approach to move along with. I will say, with regard to, the Bata property, which was a significant debate, the choice was to be looking at an older building or making an investment of over $200 million in building something which I think most people in the city would say is materially superior to the architecture that was there before, and supporting a cultural community that really deserved our support. And what's resulted is a cultural and iconic location where there's a museum and a place of worship that doesn't exist, a similar property, anywhere else in the city. Do we need to protect buildings in the Don Mills area? Yes. I will also say that I'm working with the folks on, not, I think the counselor called it the Don Mills Crossing Business Park, which kind of, that's not the most sort of attractive place to visit. But I would say, I'm working with the folks in the business owners in that area. We're moving toward creating the Winford Drive Cultural Quarter, which I think is a little bit more interesting and a bit more attractive to come to. We're having meetings with the Japanese Cultural Center and the Ismaili community to move that initiative forward. That would never have happened without the Ismailis buying that property and building a beautiful structure on it. So, I think that this is the proper way to go, and communities change. Some of these buildings have been changed, and I think, through this process, what I have learned, and, to some degree, my guess is the heritage staff will have also learned, because they probably didn't drill down to the level of detail that some of these property owners know their properties, because they're in their properties, that some of those, there have been some changes in these buildings that mean maybe certain parts of the property should be protected, but others don't deserve the same level of attention. So this has been an interesting, I think, constructive discussion, where I think the outcome right now is a positive one, where the owners that do have concerns can be listened to, and that's what we do here.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Any other speakers on the item? Supplementary report has been moved. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Item 12.7, 1015 timed item regarding a series of addresses on Yonge Street and a heritage easement at 2490, 2506 Yonge Street. I don't have any deputants listed on the item. Is there anyone here to speak on this item? No? Any questions for staff?
Yes, just,
Councillor Cole?
yeah, just the planning staff. In terms of this designation, proposed designation process to proceed, this is, again, the Capitol Theatre site at the corner of Castlefield and Yonge. Given the deferrals that took place in related items and the one that we deferred earlier, can we proceed with the approval of this item here today to get the heritage designation process started?
Through the chair, thank you. I think that given that we time these reports in coordination with the planning reports, I might advise deferral alongside the planning report so that the two are brought up at the same time again.
So you think it might be prudent just to defer this till March 12th also?
Through the chair, yes, please.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cole. Any other questions for staff? No, we're good? All right, Councillor Cole, what would you like to do? Do you want to move the staff recommendations, or?
Well, given, the question just answered by staff and the fact we are in a three-pronged approach here, I think it might be wise to defer this also to the March 12th meeting so we can get them all in sync. As much as I would like to move heritage designation, I think it's probably wise to get them to go together.
Okay, if deferring gets it right, that's fine. We'll just draft a motion for, okay. So you want to, we'll hold the item down for a couple of minutes
Yeah.
while motion, you're good? Okay. Motion for deferral on item 7 is on the floor. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Next timed item is item 11, naming of an existing public lane north of Eglinton Avenue West, extending between Marley and Farley Farley Crescent. I don't have any deputants listed on this item.
Yes,
Any questions for staff? or-
no,
No, you're good? Okay, Counselor Cole, it's your item. Any speakers?
yeah, I just want to move the staff recommendation on renaming this lane as Nicastro Lane.
Okay, staff recommendations on the floor. All those in favor? Opposed? Has carried. Item number 12, feasibility of renaming Caledonia Park to Santo Domingo Park. I do not have a list of any speakers on this item. Any questions for staff? Any speakers? Councillor Cole?
Yes, I support the staff recommendation number 2, whereby North York Community Council adopt naming the baseball diamond in Caledonia Park located at 1141 Caledonia, the Santo Domingo Baseball Diamond. So that is what I think has been agreed to with consultation with the mayor's office and with the community. And so I would support recommendation number 2. Well, it is basically supporting the staff recommendation because the community council, yeah, so it's supporting the staff recommendation.
So you're moving item 2, adopting the name?
Yeah,
Of the baseball diamond. Okay, so you're not renaming the park, you're renaming the baseball diamond? Is
Yeah.
that- Okay, yeah, no, I see in the report. Okay, any questions for, no, we're good? Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Item 13, residential demolition application 36 and 37 Jane Osler Boulevard. Any questions for staff on this item? Any speakers? So
I'll
Councillor
just,
Cole, there's...
speak
there's-
briefly.
Sorry?
I'll speak briefly.
You have to pick of the 3 options.
Okay, right, yeah, so I've picked option number,
3?
right.
3, okay. So option number 3, it's approval with conditions. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Item number 14, residential demolition application, 1202 and 1204 Avenue Road. Any questions for staff? Any speakers? Councillor Cole,
Again,
what would you like to do?
moving recommendation number 3 here again.
Recommendation 3 is moved. It's approval with conditions. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Item number 15, residential demolition application, 61 Montgomery Avenue and 58 Helendale Avenue. Any questions for staff?
Yes.
Your question for staff? Yes, Councillor Cole.
Yeah, I guess the question I have for staff, and it's probably whether it's planning or parks department, is, as you know, this recommendation basically enables the demolition of these 2 properties so that a park could be created, a micro park could be, or I call them oxygen park, could be created there on Duplex at Montgomery and Helendale. So the demolition takes place. How can we expedite the process whereby the Parks Department begins to look at turning this into a park? What do we have to do, or should we move a motion here to direct Parks to initiate a process of turning this vacant land into a park as soon as possible?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I don't believe park staff is here, but from my understanding is nothing is stopping parks from initiating that process of undertaking the design process of the park in consultation with your office and the local community. So I would just reach out to the district manager, Roseanne Clement, to get that process started. I don't think you need a formal motion for that.
And we have infrastructure and environment tomorrow, which of course includes parks, so you're welcome to bring the conversation there if you wish.
With who, did you say?
No, tomorrow you and I
Oh,
infrastructure and environment, which includes parks, so you're welcome to bring the conversation there if you wish. Thank you. You're very
Thank
welcome.
you. So I'll move the recommendation of demolition there, and it's number 3 again.
Number 3.
Demolish with conditions.
Approval of recommendation is. Councillor Carroll, did you have questions for staff on this?
Sorry, I just have a question now. So are these are being demolished, but is the land being deeded to us at this time, or is it going to be demolished and they're going to continue to own it, and therefore they enact and pay for the conditions?
Yeah,
Because it doesn't sound like we have a plan yet for the park.
no, it is this is under section 37.
Yeah,
Where-
are we using section $37 to meet the conditions if we move the conditions?
On the other hand, no, but those 2 properties are going to be deeded to the city, is my understanding. It's for park purposes. So that was part of the approval of the development application at the development which occurred.
But are they,
These are really questions for staff, and obviously we want to know who's incurring the cost of demolition.
Yeah,
I think that's
yeah.
an important thing, but
The
that's really
developer
directed
is,
towards staff.
I think the developer is incurring those costs. But anyways, we can ask staff that.
sorry to be a problem, but yeah.
No, no,
it'd be
no,
great
but
if we could
it's
bring
a
it
good
to the floor
question.
and just be clear, yeah.
I think you need those questions from staff. Who's conducting the demolition, who's paying for the demolition, and who's responsible for cleanup? Now, I had one in
Through
the
you,
city where the
Mr.
city took carriage of the demolition. I don't know what the case is here.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the land is being dedicated as part of Section 42 requirements for nearby development on Eglinton Avenue
Right.
West, and therefore the developer is responsible for delivering the park in base conditions, which would include the demolition.
Oh, so if we move the conditions, that would be, doing that clearage and hoarding and everything, that would be considered part of delivering it in the base condition. Okay, got it. Okay, thank you, thanks.
All right, so on the floor is, on 1215, is option number 3, is approval of demolition with conditions. That's what you're moving? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Number 16 is request for a fence exemption, 52 Axsmith Crescent. There's 2 deputants.
Yes, I'm sorry to have to indulge the committee. I really need to hear the deputations today because I haven't spoken either to the homeowner applicant or any of these folks. I think probably because of the holiday. This just appeared on the agenda, but no one has met with me, including the owner. If I could hear the deputations, I will then know whether or not we have a necessity to defer or to proceed.
I assume they're here.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm going to hand the gavel over to Vice Chair Carroll for a few minutes. Yizu? Oh, great. Okay, thank you very much for coming.
Okay. Thank you. Good morning. Okay, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for this opportunity for me to speaking up and tell from my point of view why and how we have to build out this fence. A little bit background. My name's Yi. I have this property is co-owned by my husband and myself. I have 2 kids, and our parents are living with us together. So a little bit facts in here. In October 5th, 2015, we bought this property. At that time, it was a nice, secure, and peaceful neighborhood. We get along with our neighbors very well, and we got everything we expected. In early 2018, the property right to us was sold out to an owner. However, it seems to us the owner doesn't live in here. On the contrary, multiple tenants were living there at the same time. And then starting from that time, my husband and myself observed the following. Number one, There are tenants who were just walking through our property they randomly like drop garbage and then they spit in our front yard. And then there are strangers who just smoking, standing in our driveway, smoking, and then watching our family's activities. For example, they are watching our sons playing ball. They are watching my parents. They are gardening. And garbage, number 3, garbage was spreading across everywhere. And then when wind blows, they just bring over, the small garbages or big ones into our property. There are small pieces that we couldn't even get it clean, which falls into the grass. Number 4 is about the noise issue. There are night out parties. We have complained, but there seems nothing get improved. So after seeing all of these observations, we tried multiple ways to improve this, to try to figure this out. We tried calling 311, we tried to complain, and then we directly knock in our neighbor's door, and then we tried to talk to the tenants. And then last, we also tried to contact the owner through the real estate broker, but no responses. So I just want to point it out, regardless of how many calls we made, how many conversation we tried to take, there's nothing improved. On the contrary, things were getting worse. So I want to show you a few pictures, which is part of our documents.
Yeah, you just
that we
have
submitted.
2 minutes left, so
Okay, yeah.
there is an overhead projector there.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
So this is like, I don't know if you have it in your hand, but this is.
We have pictures of the fence, but if you have additional pictures to what's
Okay.
in the report, there, at the other microphone, there is an overhead projector.
Yeah, for the interest of time, I will just speed up. Yeah. So, as you can see, this is the used sanitary napkins,
Yeah.
and then this is the used birth control products, which is the used condoms, which is really gross.
Just to stay on topic, though, I understand that there's a problem with the neighbor with that respect.
Yeah.
The pictures we have in our report are about the fence, because the item is about the fence.
Yeah.
So if you only have a minute to wrap up, if you could take us back to
Yeah.
the fence and what's happened so far.
Yeah, so I just want to say, regardless how many efforts we make, it seems nothing improved. So building a fence is really our last resolution. And then I want to share a little bit of thoughts and feelings as a mother of 2 that we tried efforts, but there seems nothing we can do from our side. So we can only build on such a fence. Because it brings health issues, it brings, security and safety concerns to my sons and my family. I also have sign off from my neighbors. There are more than 10 families who support our motive. But I sincerely bring up this request to have our fence exempted. That's pretty much everything.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any questions of the deputy? I just have one myself. There is one other thing. With the neighbor problem, which is quite different from the fence.
Yeah, agree.
Have you been in touch with my office about that issue?
We were sending emails to Mr. Dan Fox saying whether or not we can have an in-person meeting with you before this.
Okay.
But the response was saying, let's see how it's going, and then let's see whether we can meet after this hearing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to know for sure that was started. That will affect what we do today.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Oh, another question for you, Councillor Cole?
Yeah.
We learned our lesson before, so we always ask, how old are your children?
Oh, they are 5 and 7 years old.
Thank you.
I'm having trouble resetting this thing. Thank you. I think
Thank
those
you.
are all the questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay. There is one other deputant, Carl Kemp. Why won't that, I can't reset the thing.
Good morning. My name is Carl Kemp. I live at 58 Axmouth Crescent. We moved into the neighborhood more than 50 years ago. Now, over the decades, we have seen many changes, some positive, some not so. And the fact that not just on Axmouth Crescent, but throughout the neighborhood, there have been a number of houses converted to what we call rooming houses. Officially, North York does not have rooming houses, but we, the neighbors, know they are. Judging by the number of cars parked on the driveway, some on the lawn because there isn't enough room, and noise, I spoke to other neighbors, not just about this situation, but in other areas. I just recall the incident a few years ago where a murder happened on our street. I subsequently found out that there were more than 20 people living in this house. It was officially not a rooming house because they are legal. My plight, or my sympathy, is with the plight of the Lee family. I fully support them in trying to protect their young family from the noise and the garbage. Some of it is rather unspeakable that they photographed on the neighbor's driveway. And I suggest that perhaps some solution should be found to remedy the situation, either by allowing them to have the fence remain where it is, or else tackle the question of multiple residents living in, unrelated people living in the house, and somehow having a bad impact on the neighborhood. A few years ago, my son, who grew up in that neighborhood, came back, and as he looked at some of the houses, he says, "Dad, you know, your neighborhood is beginning to look a bit slummy." Now, a very harsh and unfair judgment. I personally felt offended him saying that, because it's my neighborhood. But the very fact that he even found reason to say that tells us something how the neighborhood has changed, primarily because of these houses that we call rooming houses. If the city can do something about that, address that issue, the fence would not even be here on the agenda. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Are there any questions of the deputy? Okay, seeing none. Do you want me to take back my chair? Because I'm going to want to speak to the item. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Vice Chair Carroll. Any questions for staff? Councillor Carroll, you wanted to speak?
Yeah, I'm going to speak. I haven't had a chance to write the motion because I was in the chair, but I'm going to move deferral of this item for 1 month because I do have a lot of questions for staff. It seems that they wrote the report and then some changes have been made to the fence. Dealing with the fence itself, we didn't really talk about in the deputations, but there's a conversation to be had here with the residents, and I have not had the opportunity to have it because I gather you contacted Dan before the holidays. Then our meeting came up so quickly after that I haven't had a chance for a direct conversation. But I just want to say that this conversation is well timed because as we can see, it's really not about the fence. It's about illegal rooming houses in North York, and it's perfectly timed. The difficulty you're going through, I of course wholeheartedly appreciate. I've been trying to deal with it for now. It's 18 years now since the double cohort year doubled the number of students in Seneca College, and they never looked back and continued to enlarge. At the end of this very month, finally, we are once again going to have a report before us about what we are doing about suburban, particularly around suburban campus rooming houses. Are we going to zone them? Are we going to license them? Where are they going to go? That is imminent. But it's apart from the issue of our fence bylaw. So we have a bigger conversation to have, and I have some big questions to ask of staff and a conversation to have with yourselves. But I want to thank you for coming today to make your deputations, and I took them even though I'm going to discuss the item later. Other neighbors could speak to it then. Your husband could speak to it because you only get to speak to an item once. So when it comes back, it will have to be someone else. But we also need to just file these deputations in our minds, because when that rooming house item comes back, it will be the 4th time since I took office in 2003 that we've tried to deal with it, and it somehow got deferred off, and we didn't deal with the issue of student rooming in single-family dwellings in North York. We have to deal with it in the year 2020. So thank you so much for underscoring that for my colleagues and I. Really, just before, we're within a month of starting that conversation. But Dan will be in touch with you so that we can sit down in person and take advantage of the deferral month. Thank you. Those are my comments on the motion.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Carroll. Deputy Mayor Minnan-Wong?
Yes, I normally don't like people putting up fences without permission, and I usually say no. And then, so that I don't like the idea that you did that without permission. I don't like, I don't like fences that go up in the front of people's, in their front yards, because I don't like the barriers that it makes. But we get these from time to time, and you got to listen to the people and determine whether, you got to hear what they have to say. So I'm persuaded to support what you've asked for. The local councillor has asked for a deferral, which I'll support. But I think that subject to when this comes back and more information, I think the trouble that you're being caused is, I believe you. I think the trouble that's being caused is real and material, and that you're being sufficiently bothered, and you're not being able to enjoy your front yard. So I'm persuaded to support your application, and I hope we can reach a resolution when it comes back in a month. A month?
They've already cut down half of it. I just want to understand why it's not compliant.
Okay, any other speakers on the item? Okay, so what are we doing here? You're deferring it to the next? Okay. A motion of deferral has been moved. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. So before that wraps up the formal part of the agenda, although we do have to do the enabling bills, we have with us someone who's retiring, and Francine Adamo, who's been a dedicated City of Toronto employee for 48 years. It's quite a remarkable run, so it's 48. She started with the city of, Councillor Minnan-Wong, I know you're very enthusiastic, but I'm just going to read a few biographical notes. Francine started with the former city of North York on June the 14th, 1971. Everyone's a comedian. And was committee coordinator and administrative assistant to the planning commissioner. As a committee coordinator, Francine supported the planning board, planning advisory committee, planning committee, and committee of adjustment. Prior to amalgamation, Francine attended all the consultation meetings held by the Toronto transition team, composed of one councillor from each former municipality, and produced all the minutes, which were involved in a brief summary of all the comments made by the 100 speakers at each of these consultation meetings held at the City Hall and the Civic Centres of all the previous municipalities. She joined the City Clerk's office in January of 1999 and the Administrator of North York Community Council. In the City Clerk's office, Francine was supported the North York Community Council, the Board of Health, and all its subcommittees, the Toronto Centre for the Arts, the Toronto Election Finance Review Task Force, Downsview Park Operating Protocol Committee, and have led a team responsible for meeting management and registry services involving the issuance of marriage licenses and the processing of death registrations. She's also been a mentor and coach to various staff in both the Planning Division, City Clerk's Division, and the city's lead in various matters involving the City Clerk's office. She's been a member of the Association of Municipal Clerks and Treasurers of Ontario since 1987. Now, on a personal note, having been the chair of Infrastructure and Environment and, of course, North York Community Council, and if I have any more chairs, I'll have a dining room set. I can't underestimate the value of the clerk that sits usually to the right of the chair. Francine has played a vital role in the short time that I've been chair. There are just so many moving parts at one of these meetings. There's the councillors, there's deputants, there's members of the public, there's city staff, there's statutory issues, there's timing issues, and it is the clerk that really keeps everything focused, online, on schedule, and keeps the trains moving. So I can tell you with absolute certainty that we would not succeed here in this chair if it wasn't for yourself and some of your colleagues in the clerk's office. So I just wanted to personally thank you for the support that you've given me to get through some of these agendas over the past year, and I really wish you all the best in the years ahead, whatever your plans may be. And we have a lovely scroll here, co-signed by the mayor, which I would like to present with you. And if my colleagues would like, we'd also like to do a group picture. And once again, thank you so much for your contribution to the City of Toronto. Oh, yes, so forgive me, I didn't want to dominate the discussion. If individual councillors want to share a few remarks, I understand Councillor Fillion would like to say a couple of things, and if anyone else wants to, you're welcome.
Yeah, no, I just want to say, Francine, you're just have been amazing, incredible. I don't know what words to use to describe you. I don't know how this place is going to function without you. And if you'd just done your regular job in the way you do it, that would have been phenomenal enough. But all of the way that you've dealt with all the crazy politicians you've had to deal with over 48 years, it's just speaking for one crazy politician. We can be in the office here at 6:30, 7:30, and we'll think, oh my God, we forgot to do such and such. How do we fix this? And I'll say, phone and see if Francine's still here. And you inevitably are. You inevitably go, don't worry, I'll look after that. And you have it fixed in 5 seconds. I've left things on my desk. I've incorrectly put things in the recycling bin and then thought, hours later, oh my God, what did I just lose? And I'd say to whoever was in my office, phone Francine, and inevitably you had found it in the recycling bin. You had taken it off the desk and put it in safekeeping. Everything was always retrievable. If it was anything in here, you always looked after it. And my favorite is the many years of North York politicians giving rambling, incoherent speeches and then saying, I move that. And everybody going, what did they just move? I have no idea. And then you would always just say, come up with a completely succinct and coherent motion, again in 5 seconds, and say, is this what you intended to move? And so you're just old school in the best sense of the word, and the work ethic and just everything else. And we're going to miss you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Fillion.
I can make it much shorter than that. In the game of Survivor, Francine outwitted and outlasted even Howard Moscow.
So I have some comments from the mayor. Mayor John Tory and members of the City Council extend their sincere appreciation, congratulations to Francina Damo for the City Clerk's office on your retirement after 48 years of service. Toronto enjoys the status of being one of the world's leading urban communities thanks to the high caliber of hardworking employees committed to public service. We thank you for your job well done and offer our best wishes for a long, happy, and healthy retirement. Signed, Mayor John Tory, and of course, myself as well. So I'd be happy to present this to you with a group photo. One more thing to do. Councillor Cole, you have a motion to introduce and enact certain bills.
Yes, I move that North York Community Council pass and declare as bylaws Bill 7 to 17, prepared for the January 8th, 2020 meeting 12 of the Community Council. I so move.
Shall these bills be passed and declared as a bylaw? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Councillor Carroll, you have a motion to introduce and enact the confirming bill.
Yes, Mr. Chair, that the North York Community Council pass and declare as a bylaw a confirmatory bill to confirm the legislative proceedings of the North York Community Council acting under delegated authority at meeting number 12 on January 8th, 2020.
Great. Shall this bill be passed and declared as a bylaw? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Well, thank you very much to members of the public, to our clerks, to our city staff, and enjoy the rest of the week. And of course, once again, a happy new year, a safe and successful new year.